Welcome to session number 31 of Genesis in Depth. I'm Dr. John McMath, joined here today by my friends in Italy and the Philippines and in a variety of other places. You can find the materials that we've been going through the past several years on YouTube and Facebook. Just look for my name, John McMath, or look for LJPF. Or there's a variety of places you're going to find this that's out there. Today we'll be in chapter 38 of the book of Genesis. 38 is a strange chapter. It's a shameful thing. It's a little disgusting. Uh, it's supposed to be. God put it here, well, through Moses, but he put it here for the literary purpose of contrast. We're going to see the contrast between Joseph and Judah. In the last chapter, we saw the story of Joseph beginning. He was born, he's a 17-year-old, probably a little bit, he's probably got some pride and he's got all the other typical stuff that teenagers have. And so he was a pain in the neck for his brothers. Now, it's generally thought to be not good practice to kill your baby brother because he's a pain in the neck. If we all did that, none of us would have baby brothers. Uh, so the boys were wrong to try to uh, kill Joseph or to sell him into slavery. That's also generally considered not an appropriate way to handle a difficult little brother. Uh, so the family isn't working very well. Of course, that's the point. Judah was in the midst of all this, and he's the one who suggested, why should we kill him when we can make a small profit? We'll just sell him to the Arabs going past. So Judah has already demonstrated a less than stellar character. We could go further than that, but that'll do. You're going to see how he turns out. Chapter 38. This story opens up uh, with some difficult phrases, but I'll kind of tell you what I think is going on, and we can go from there. The whole story begins with the escapades of Judah. It happened at that time that Judah went down from his brothers and turned aside to a certain Adullamite whose name was Hira. Okay, the Adulamites were yet another Canaanite group, uh, and this particular Hira was just one of apparently Jacob's buddies. Perhaps they were drinking, or perhaps they were, telling tall stories, or whatever. He was visiting with Hira in his compound. And there, Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite. Doesn't even give the Canaanite's name. Um, it doesn't say how Judah happened to run into her. My guess is that Hira was throwing a block party of some sort. And Donna says, just a gallery. Okay. Oh, yeah, they will. You need to choose to have that picture big. Okay. Sorry, I'm talking to Donna. She's still having some trouble with her equipment. Um, what were we saying? Um, Hira, I suspect, was throwing a block party of some kind, and everybody from the neighborhood was showing up, and everybody brought their own food and their own drink, and everybody was having a lovely time. And while Judah was there at this big get together, he saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. And very straightforwardly, he took her and went into her. And she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name Okay, that's very straightforward statement of what is in reality a truly awful thing. Uh, and you can see that just by reading this. The phrase "he took her" uh, simply means that he grabbed her and dragged her off into a tent somewhere, and he went into her. Is the terminology usually used for having forceful sex with someone? So he raped this woman, and yeah, well, of course, she conceived and bore a son. This comes later, and he called his name Ur. Judah stayed around. Then there's something to be said for that. And she conceived again and bore a son and called his name Onan. Yet again she bore a son and called his name Shelah. And Judah was in Chesed when she bore him. Okay, a lot of that doesn't matter. What we've got here is a Judah's forceful marriage to a Canaanite woman. Not a good thing. So these three boys are half Canaanite. Ur and Onan are the two that we're going to take a look at. And Judah took a wife for Ur, his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. So this is several years later. This is all going on in the Promised Land while Joseph is off in Egypt. And Joseph's story will be told later, beginning at chapter 39. So Judah took a wife. Her name was Tamar. And Tamar undoubtedly is yet another Canaanite woman. There's no reason to think that Judah has suddenly uh, got religion and gone back to his own people. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord. And we're not told how. Uh, we're allowed to imagine what was going on, but no, it's not very impressive. But was wicked, and the Lord put him to death. Okay, I'm assuming very wicked. And then Judah said to Onan, the brother, "Go into your brother's wife and perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her and raise up offspring for your brother." Okay, this is called levirate marriage. And we find this actually practiced in Old Testament times, and probably not only in the biblical stories. We think this is very likely all over the place. It happens because of the importance of land in the whole society and the inheritance of property rights. Uh, if uh, uh, if a man dies without children, then there is no one to inherit whatever property he has. Uh, and it was assumed that a wife would not inherit property. In the broader Near Eastern world, women had no rights. Only the men had rights to property or ownership or contracts or anything else. Not Again, this is not nice. And so Onan was asked by his father to go to Tamar and do the duty of a brother-in-law. That is, he's to uh, have relations with Tamar, produce children. Uh, and the firstborn of that relationship would be considered the son of Ur for property inheritance purposes. Any other children that he had would be his own. And with all of this, there's a considerable amount of responsibility. So Onan would be taking the responsibility to raise a child who would not be his own son, would be the son of his brother. and then to raise other children. So that's a financial, it's a time, it's the commitment of 20 years of your life, and all of the things that go with the responsibilities of being a dad. Uh, and Onan apparently decided that since the offspring would not be his, this is verse 9, that whenever he went into his brother's wife, he would waste his seed on the ground. In other words, he would have all of the pleasure of a physical relationship with this young woman with none of the responsibility. Uh, uh, Frankly, the whole thing is disgusting. Um, I find Onan to be uh, not a good guy at all. I don't like him. He refused to provide offspring for his brother. He was an irresponsible, selfish, stupid young man. And what he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord. Well, of course it was. And so the Lord put him to death also. Okay. Now, this is not good. So we've got two boys down and one to go. The young one is probably just a toddler by the name of Shelah. And Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house until this little boy Shelah grows up, and then uh, he can be your husband. But he feared that he also would die like his brothers. And Tamar went and remained in her father's house. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. Okay, now Judah is a widower. When Judah was comforted, which takes a week or so, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. Ah, yes, so they've got another party going. And when Tamar was told, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep, she took off her widow's garments and covered herself with a veil, wrapping herself up, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown up, as she had not been given to him in marriage. Now, as you can see, a great deal of time is passing. And Judah does not seem to have grown up particularly. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. He turned to her at the roadside and said, come, let me come in to you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what will you give me that you may come in to me? So they're negotiating the price. And he answered, I will send you a young goat from the flock. And she said, if you give me a pledge until you send it. He said, well, what pledge shall I give you? And she replied, your signet and your cord and your staff that is in your hand. And that's some fairly significant um, promissory stuff. That this is good collateral. The signet is the ring that Judah would use to sign documents, uh, and it's the proof of his ownership of his property. The cord would be that which wrapped around his waist. His staff would be his own personal walking stick. Now, all of these would be unique items that would be recognizable by other people who knew Judah. So he gave them to her, and he went into her, and she conceived by him, of course. And then she rose and went away, and taking off her veil, she put on her garments of widowhood. All right. Now that so far, this is not a pretty story. Okay. Judah seems to have no problem at all um, having relations with just about anybody he runs into. he did stay faithful, more or less, to this woman whom he married by rape. Um, but here he's after a prostitute. So Judah sent the young goat by his friend the Adullamite to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, but he did not find her. And he asked the men of the place, "Where is the cult prostitute who was at Enaim at the roadside?" And they said, "Why, no cult prostitute has been here." Now, it's interesting that the term cult prostitute is used here. In the Middle East at this time, there were two kinds of prostitution. I know too much information, but there really were two kinds. There was the common secular prostitute, women who just sold themselves on the market, and there were prostitutes who were given, usually by their families, to one of the pagan temples. Uh, the temples of the pagan world were generally either to male gods or to female goddesses, and the gods and goddesses uh, had a gay old time cavorting in heaven or on the top of a mountain or in the place beyond the seas, wherever they went for this. And the mythology of the Canaanites in particular required that that the gods uh, commit sexual interaction with one another, gods and goddesses, and that guaranteed the fertility of the earth. This is why we call these the fertility cults. The prostitutes, both male and female prostitutes, and both heterosexual and homosexual, operated in the temple precincts as um, as a way of allowing the so-called worshipers to imitate magically what they hoped the gods would do. So that's what the whole cult prostitution thing is. Uh, Again, is part of the reason that God declared that the Canaanites should be destroyed. This is a truly awful thing, and when you consider all of the elements of it, this is a truly awful thing. So they said, well, okay, there's not been any cult prostitute here. So she returned to Judah and said, I have not found her. Also, the men of the place said, there's been no cult prostitute. And Judah replied, well, let her keep the things as her own, and we shall be laughed at. You see, I sent this young goat, and you did not find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. However, moreover, she is pregnant by immorality. And Judah said, well, bring her out, let her be burned. Okay, that was the punishment. Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned. Uh, the uh, the hypocrisy is amazing. Interestingly, it still continues to this day in Arabian Muslim practice. In Sharia law, if a woman is found to be pregnant outside of wedlock uh, and claims that there was a rape, she must produce three adult male witnesses to that rape, or she will be burned alive. Um, you're never going to find three witnesses. It can never happen. Uh, so very much the same culture exists today. It's equally shameful today as it was then. So he says, let her keep the things. Okay, so Tamar should be burned. And as she was being brought out, she sent word to her father-in-law. by the man to whom these things belong, I am pregnant. And she said, please identify whose these are, the signet and the cord and the staff. And Judah identified them and said, she is more righteous than I. Again, a horrendously ironic statement. Neither of them is being particularly righteous. Anyway, she is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah, and he did not know her again. You can imagine that their relationship was not great. When her time of labor came, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one put out a hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread around it. Again, the importance of the inheritance belonging to the firstborn, all of that that's going on. The scarlet thread. And she said, this one came out first. But as he drew back his hand, behold, his brother came out. And she said, what a breach you have made for yourself. Therefore his name was called Perez. Afterward his brother came out with the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. Okay. Now, if we didn't have anything else to go on, this would just be a contrasting story. What makes this significant is the fact that both Judah and Perez are in the Messianic line. Neither one is the firstborn. It seems that it is standard practice for God to say, you humans may have a tradition that the eldest always inherits, but I will send the inheritance along whichever line I choose. And this has happened several times so far. So Judah, of course, was not the firstborn, and he was not the son of the favored wife. Joseph was. But Judah is the man who will be the son of promise and carry the messianic line. And now again, we have another generation, and this through this terrible sequence of events that are disgusting and genuinely awful. It says this is nothing but a disgustingly broken family. Perez is in the line of promise. Now, why does God do this? God could easily have arranged things. Because he is sovereign, he's the king, he can do everything exactly as he wants to. He could do it any way he wanted to. He could have made Joseph the child of promise. And then we could have had our plaster Saint Joseph. And it would have been a very good thing, and everybody would have agreed that that was a good choice. But instead, it's Judah. And then Perez. Perez is a half-breed. He's got some Jewish heritage. He's also got Canaanite heritage. This is strange on a number of levels. Now, as we get further into the Old Testament, we discover that this is not uncommon. You all know that Rahab was a Canaanite prostitute, and she married Salmon, one of the invaders in Joshua's army, and between them they produced an offspring who was the next in the messianic line. Then later on, that line came down through Boaz, who married a Moabite girl, and the prohibition against marrying Moabites was very strong. So Boaz married Ruth, and several generations later, here comes David. So the Davidic line has passed through several generations that were far from righteous. The point seems to be that the righteousness of the messianic line does not depend on human behavior. The Jesus isn't perfect and holy and all the good things because all of the human beings um, in his human line were saints. It isn't true. And the theological point of all of that is that our salvation doesn't depend on our holiness. Our salvation depends on the grace of God. Now, when God has been gracious and he is in fact working in our lives, that will over time produce holiness. We will become more Christ-like as we live. But our salvation does not depend on that. And these stories are a little difficult to handle. Uh, I've rarely heard these or this chapter of Genesis preached. I have once that I can remember not too long ago, but it's hard to preach with a congregation. This chapter 38 stands in stark contrast to the chapter that is coming, and I need to get the share screen going here. Let me see if I can do that. All right. Share, share, share. Oops. Oops, and that's not quite what I wanted to do. Let me stop that share, and I'll get out of it and do it again. Share, and we'll do this. Okay, that way I can. There we go. Oh, wrong one. Okay, there we go. See if it comes up. Okay, there we go. So this shameful interlude with Judah, Tamar, chapter 38, and this is in contrast to Joseph's story, which is in 39 to 41. Joseph rose to power in Egypt. This slide is the interior of a tomb in Egypt, in the Valley of the Kings, actually. And the character on the far left is, I believe this is Amenhotep II. I'm trying to remember where they said this came from. One of my students took this picture. I didn't actually get to go in the tomb. I was sick that day. Yeah. Anyway, chapter 39. We see this story continue. Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. Okay, a couple of things here. So Joseph had been brought down to Egypt. It would have come down the caravan route. This would have been a very common occurrence, along with all the camels, with merchandise for sale, there would be slaves. And this was very normal. The Egyptians, of course, were more than happy to buy the slaves. And Potiphar, who is an officer of the Pharaoh. We're not sure which kind of officer. He doesn't seem to be military, but he seems quite an elevated position. He's an important character. He would be considered a part of Egyptian nobility. Now, there were three categories of people who had significant tombs in Egypt. There were the kings or pharaohs. There were the queens, who were the wives of the pharaohs, and there was the nobility, noblemen, rich men who were servants within the royal entourage, cabinet members, if you will. So Potiphar was on the order of a secretary of state or a secretary of war, something like that. He's an important person, very important, and always running around doing important things and making a lot of money. This is that's the substantial thing of it. Now, something that is Worth noting is that Potiphar's name is clearly an Egyptian Middle Kingdom name. Uh, I say that in order to lay the foundation for a later argument. When we look at the chronology of this time, the critics like to say that Joseph and Jacob uh, went down into Egypt, if they ever did, which is not a sure thing according to the critics, during the time of the Hyksos. The Hyksos were um, Syrian Semitic shepherd kings who took over Egypt from the period of about 1750 to about 1550 BC, a 200-year period there. What's different about the Hyksos is that they wore their hair long. They didn't shave. They were happy keeping sheep, and they were usurpers of the Egyptian king. They were broadly hated in Egypt, and the critics have tried to manufacture some kind of way in which this story was made up and then altered and then inserted during the Hyksos era. Now, the Hyksos could conceivably have been happy to receive the Israelites, and that would explain the unhappiness of the king of Egypt at the end of this long period. But it doesn't fit. It simply doesn't work. All the way through the Joseph narrative, we see names, we see um, societal practices, we see cultural elements that are distinctly Egyptian and Middle Kingdom Egyptian. That is, prior to the Hyksos Second Intermediate period. Uh, tomb paintings like this are distinctively Egyptian. Joseph uh, becomes the servant of an officer with a distinctly Egyptian name. Now, as he was there, the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. And in the house of his Egyptian master, he was he was the main man. His master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house over all he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had, in house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge. And because of him, he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. Okay, Joseph turned out to be a real blessing to his new master, Potiphar. And it was because of Joseph's faithfulness, first of all to God, but then to whoever else demanded faithfulness of him. Here he is a slave. He had good reason to be upset with that, and yet he chose to serve his master as he would serve the Lord. That's a good practice. Paul picks that up in the New Testament. Uh, do your work as unto the Lord. You'll be a blessing to your boss. You'll be a blessing to the people around you. Your life will be more successful. It's all a good thing. Now, the plot is going to change here quite rapidly, and if I get started here, I'm going to miss an appointment this afternoon. So we're going to break off here at verse 6, and I'm going to pick this up with you again next week, same time, same place. This one was a little short, but next week we'll probably end up going a little long in order to get it all done. Let me change, make the share stop and the unmute. Yeah, okay. The key thing in this whole episode is the contrast. God is saying, look at Joseph. This is a good guy. And he's not, because he's a good guy, he's going to suffer all the way along. We'll come back next week and I'll show you some more of all the stuff that Joseph did, how he rises to power, because we see God at work in every bit of it. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Love y'all.
Thank you, Dr. John.
Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao tutti.
Ciao tutti.
Ciao tutti.
Thank you, Dr.